Wes Goldberg. It is Friday, May 24th. This is the Just Basketball Show. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you and our viewers, our listeners. Question for you, cold open question of the day. We're recording this, we should note, before Kobe Altman speaks to the media, but JB Bickerstaff out as Cleveland Cavaliers head coach. So who's the right guy to replace him?
It's a great question. I know that the Cavs probably want to fill in this vacancy relatively quickly, but I think that they should wait until the Western Conference Finals are over and go ahead with and try to hire Mike Nori away from Minnesota. I still think that there's something to be done about a Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley front court. And I like the idea of grabbing somebody from Minnesota who made the Rudy Gobert cat thing work and bringing that and installing that in Cleveland. And if you are able in Cleveland to hold on to Donovan Mitchell, you can kind of squint and see the outline of something similar to what it is that the Timberwolves have done with a facilitating point guard, a scoring shooting guard, and two big men. Now, the the difference between all those players is what it is, but at least installing a system that works, which felt like something that JB Bickerstaff was never able to accomplish, would go a very long way in sort of figuring out what exactly this Cavaliers team is and what direction that they want to go in.
I want to give you two names that make me concerned about Mike Nori, about that like translating. I think he should be on the long list, but I'm going to tell you two people in Minnesota that make me concerned that he would not translate one-to-one in the way you're kind of thinking. Chris Finch, who is the offensive architect there, and Naz Reid, who I think unlocks a lot of offensive stuff that makes that team work. Like, you're not going to get Naz Reid and bring him over, you know?
Unless you do.
I would love that.
How many first round picks does it take for Naz Reid?
They don't have any first round picks.
That's true.
Karis LeVert and Jordan Yang for Naz Reid. Here would be, I think the Kenny Atkinson name being right out there from Woj tells me like he's very high in their list. I think that would be a more than adequate hire. Like, I think if you're saying we're going to go offensive-minded, Donovan Mitchell-focused, guy who also has a track record of development based on his Brooklyn job, I think that's a pretty good hire. The three that I'm going to just, if I were to pick one, I think it would be Sam Cassell. Like, that's just, I think that guy's just going to be a great head coach, and I just want to be the team that hires Sam Cassell. The other two that I would say would be Atkinson, or I think James Borrego is like a good head coach.
Would be very, yeah. Yep, get Atkinson and
Lakers
Borrego some talent because they've never really had
Yeah.
that. Now Atkinson obviously has had a ton of talent as an assistant in Golden State, but get these guys some like legitimate, real talent, and I would like to see what they can do. These are sort of, they would technically be retread coaches, but they wouldn't feel like it, right? It would be more of, here's a real opportunity finally after you kind of proved yourself with some lower rung teams, whether it was Brooklyn or Charlotte. I think all of those hires would be good. You're spot on Sam Cassell too. Anybody you talk to says this guy's gonna be a great head coach. It's just a matter of time. Cassell actually might be the one in the position to kind of pick his spot. He can kind of just sort of buy his time until there's the right opportunity, and maybe Cleveland could be that opportunity for him. I have no idea how he feels about it, but as long as they kind of go in this direction, I think they'll be fine. And they don't go in the direction of so many of these other teams that end up hiring Doc Rivers or these other like real retread coaches. Not to throw Doc Rivers' name under the bus, but you need somebody that has experience with young teams and developing those young teams and installing systems, and not and it feels like that's what Cleveland is doing, because that's why I brought up a name like Doc Rivers. He's less of an install a system guy and more of let me cater to the superstars, let me get them involved, like let me do this thing. And the Cavaliers have a superstar in Donovan Mitchell, at least for now. We'll see how much longer. But what they really need is a scheme, a system, a culture, that kind of thing.
Particularly on two fronts. Number one, it feels like the roster reset is coming there, and like I think you're going to need to build something new or like new adjacent, right? And number two, all the stuff that Brian Windhorst in particular is saying in reporting, Wes, is that they're going to like try to like pitch this around Mitchell, that like the part of the reason they're doing this is because like Mitchell and Bickerstaff did not work. So like this hire feels like in some ways about Mitchell. I think it can't just be about Mitchell because this organization has other issues I think need to be figured out, and I think player development being a big one of them for a small market team, I think that's essential. But I think like finding a coach who's going to get the most out of Mitchell maybe like Quinn Snyder, I think is like a template to that, right? It's like you can get Mitchell probably doesn't have the same trajectory he does unless he ends up with the right coach to start his career. And I think kind of thinking about him in that vein, and a lot of superstars in that vein, frankly, guys we're going to talk about today, I think is more than fair. But I think we hit some names. Chris Quinn probably should be on that list as well. Shout out to the Heat culture, baby. All right, on today's show, we've got something very fun planned. We're going to do a player playoff and one coach draft. We're each going to draft a 5-man starting lineup and a 6-man. We're also going to touch on each conference finals. Let's go. It's the Just Basketball Show for Friday, May 24th. Hey there, welcome in to the Just Basketball Show. I am Chris Manning. That is Wes Goldberg. This is your 3 times a week show covering all things basketball. Please follow, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. And you can hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and X. Over on TikTok and Instagram right now, you can find some content from our newest that we're doing with some odds from our newest partner, BetMGM. I'm going to tell you about our friends at BetMGM. Support for today's show of the Just Basketball Show comes from BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBasketball and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Step 1. You have download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 years or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Wes, it's draft time. You want to explain the rules to our listeners out there?
Yeah, so really excited about this. There are some guidelines. Essentially what we're doing is we're drafting our playoff rosters. This is based off of playoff performance, off of players that were involved in this postseason, but there are some stipulations. We're only allowed 2 star players to be drafted to these teams. How do we define a star player? With a usage rate over 24%. And somebody who at least averages 30 minutes a game and who is getting paid the max, or I should say, getting paid the max or something close to the max. So we kind of put a pool of star players together. I don't need to run through the names. People kind of know who they are. So if it feels like they're a star player, then they're probably a star player. And then you're only allowed 2 of those, and then everything else is role players, and then at the end we'll also choose a 6th man. So there's going to be 6 rounds, 6 selections each for both of us. We can choose these players in any order. We could take our 6th man with our first pick if we want. It's fine. We can do it in any order that we'd like. And at the very end, you and I are both going to draft our coaches. Brendan blindly decided, I don't even think he knew what the exercise was.
He didn't, but I just want to see, you say blindly. I'm really concerned about election security in our podcast, Wes, because Brendan's just flippantly, taking out personal grudges against me for no reason,
Yeah, which is weird because he really should be upset with me.
Classic, just not reading, not paying attention.
That's okay. I'm gonna get the first pick according to Brendan, right, which means that you get the first pick for the coach, which isn't exactly fair, but it is something.
I'm okay with that. Are we? Because I have a way. I'm gonna test you on the coach thing. Are we? Also, we never decided this. So we're just going back and forth. No snake, correct?
Correct. No snake. Not for 2 people.
Yeah. Okay. So just clarifying.
All right. So we'll just jump in right now.
Let's go. Who's your first pick?
All right. My first pick. I'm going with Derek White.
Okay, you didn't steal my move like 1-to-1, but you stole my move of like getting a role guy earlier than
I want the role guy
for the start. Okay,
yeah, I think that
talk about Derek White #1 overall.
Derek White, first of all, is having a phenomenal playoffs. He's shooting 43% from 3-point range. The rebounding, the defense, everything about him is one of one when you consider that he's still a role player. Now, when he gets this next contract, he might be considered a star according to this exercise. But for now, The dude's the best role player in the NBA. He's versatile. I could draft him onto my team, plug him into my starting five somewhere, and know that whatever star I end up getting is going to fit with Derek White. And I do think looking at the star pool and the role player pool, well, I'm not going to give away my secret right now. So I'm taking Derek White. I feel really good about it. I feel like he's the best role player, and I get a guy who's going to make any star, who's going to fit with any star that I do end up getting. So you're next.
Okay, that's more than fair. He was obviously on my long list. I'm gonna go star first because I there's a guy I really want, and I think it's the guy, Wes, that had the best singular performance of any guy in these playoffs, and it's someone who's out of the playoffs now.
Mm-hmm.
But his 40 performance against the Wolves in Game 5 was the best performance any player's had in this postseason. That's Nikola Jokic, the best player in the world.
It's a good pick.
It was not the reason his team is out. It was the rest of that roster. Kevin O'Connor wrote a really interesting piece of The Ringer this week about like that team, maybe not that organization and the coaching staff and the front office not all being in unison and some cracks there. You can read into that what you want, think that what you want. I think it's an interesting thought process as we think about team building. But give me that guy who's at the peak of his powers, who had the best performance. And to your point about building something, yes, you have to build certain things around him, but I can find anyone that I can draft today and pair him with a guy. Yes, it maybe limits the different things I can do as far as different players, in that sense. But I'm gonna take the best player in the world and be happy with that.
More than fair. All right. So now, what do I do? All right, I'm gonna go. All right. I'm going Ant. I'm going Anthony Edwards. I feel good about it.
This was the other guy I would have taken first overall. Like it was him because he's the moment, right? Like he is the moment.
He's the moment, and he should be, right? Like who is the better player between Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic? It's Luka Doncic. It's still Luka. If you ask me who the best player is right now, it's Luka, and I would draft Luka, and I wouldn't even think that hard about it. But Anthony Edwards is having a better postseason so far than Luka Doncic. Now, Game 1 of Minnesota-Dallas didn't exactly bear that out, and it could influence me in going Luka. If we did this exercise maybe this time next week, I might end up drafting Luka, but we are basing this off of playoff performance, and right now Anthony Edwards' overall package of playoff performance is better than Luka's. 28 points per game, 50% shooting, 40% from three, 6.5 rebounds, 6.1 assists, basically doing the things Luka did in the regular season when I would have had him as my MVP. Luka, meanwhile, 43%, 30% from three-point range, so the shooting percentages have just been down. Anthony Edwards' shooting percentages have been up. The defense that we've seen from Ant has been fantastic. Luka still has the best of him in terms of playmaking, but Ant has taken a step forward in that degree. And I think if I hit my strategy right, I already got Derek White. I've got enough ball handlers where I don't need to do the heliocentric thing. Not to say Dallas has kind of moved away a little bit from that, but it's still ultimately up to Luka and Kyrie. So I get Ant. I get the best two-way player in the playoffs this year. I feel good about it. So I've got Derek White and Ant. You have the next pick.
We should note, too, is like Kyrie and I think we put Rudy Gobert both technically in the star category, despite not having usages over 24%. I think those are the two.
But they're
guys,
making
correct?
star money, and we consider them stars. So yeah.
Yes, so they're in there. Okay, so I'm gonna just speak. This is my heart. I'm not gonna say this is the most logical pick of all time. I expect for you to chuckle at this one a little bit. I'm taking Naz Reid, brother. I understand that I took a center first overall, but that guy, I fucking love him. I think he's been unbelievable. He's high on the role player list. I think what he did in the last game for the Wolves and sparking their comebacks at times, him and Cat were like right up there. I think you're hard pressed to find a more useful, like versatile big in this league that allows you to. He can play the 5 at times. I think you could find ways to do things with him and Jokic where like he's playing the 4 and running drag screens off ball and like bringing the ball. Like you can do stuff. I just love that guy, and I think the front court depth of things I can do is just like a little wonky. And I just like also want to say I have Naz Reid on my basketball team. This was when I texted you yesterday. I was gonna do something weird. I just planned on taking Naz Reid for the shock value really early. Like this was a bit playing the whole way. But I love Naz Reid. I want him.
I had him on my list. He's on my board. He is certainly not as high on my board as you had him, but congrats.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing your Nas Reed tattoo. Is
Right
the
there.
idea
I got
here, by the way, that our teams are playing each other in like an NBA Finals, or is it?
I don't know. I kind of thought of this as just like vibes, like we're hanging like
Okay,
all NBA
very
style
good. So
stuff.
this is not.
Just like
It's
yeah.
better. Yeah, that's better than going.
Because
one-on-one. I like that.
if that's the case, I'm already fucked. You know what I mean? Like I
I
might
don't
as well
know.
just like at this rate, I might as well be like, can I play Jokic at power forward and get like another big? Like, can I just get weird here?
Well,
Like,
you
what am I
do.
doing? But
You can play Jokic at
yeah,
power
it's just
forward and
the-
play Reed at center.
oh, I mean, I absolutely am. You kidding me? That you tell me I'm running Nasrid off of screens with Jokic like passing from the elbow. Like we're out here.
So I'm next.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. All right. Wow, I don't know where to go with this, man. I've got some options. This Nas Reed thing really threw me for a loop. I thought I'd actually
right.
have fewer options than I have here. Not to brag, but I'm gonna go with. You already took Jokic. You haven't taken your next star. I could galaxy brain this thing.
Can I I'll give you a chance to think about this. I'm gonna vamp for a second. There to me as we're looking at the star list, and I don't want to say without saying names. I think if we're thinking about the star list, there is one, two. I think there are 3 stars really left that I would feel like there are 4 stars. So 2 are her. We each have 2. We each have a star left that are going to go undrafted. Maybe 4 if you wanted to put Kyrie in there. Maybe 5 if you wanted to put Kyrie in there. I think there are 4 stars left that I would be like really enthused about being drafting. There are 2 that I think you absolutely kind of need to draft, and I'm curious to see what we do.
Yep. All right. I feel pretty good about everything I have left, and I'm not going to go off my board here, despite the fact that I could get Anthony Edwards and Luka on the same team. But it just doesn't feel like that doesn't feel like a real basketball team, and I don't want this to just be like, hey, pick your top 5 playoff players. Like I want this to feel like and operate like a good basketball team.
Okay.
So I'm going to go here with. Give me Lou Dort.
I love this. Dort's on my long list. I give me a Dortcher chamber in the playoffs is awesome. Very high up on like the Thunder guys who acquitted themselves well in these playoffs. I love to talk about him.
Shot 40% from 3 in these playoffs, which was, and I was honestly between him and McDaniels, and I just give Dort the edge here. Also, because looking at the stars that are left, if you're going to get one of these star guards, I like Dort's ability to guard them a little bit more than McDaniels' ability to guard them. So, to me, this is one of the best defenders in the NBA. It's not close. He's stout. He's strong. I love going in on strength here. I've got Edwards. I've got Dort. I've got Derek White. I've got a strong physical lineup, and I trust Dort to bring the ball up a little bit, but more than anything, just kind of, he could be a second side attack guy when Edwards kind of drives and kicks. He could set good screens for any of my guys, and he's going to knock down the open threes because that's what he was doing in the playoffs. So I feel really good about him, and ultimately what gave him the edge over McDaniels was the fact that his three-point percentage was just way better than McDaniels. I know McDaniels just went like 5 for 5 from three-point range, but again, taking the whole body of work so far in the postseason, Dort was more of a knockdown shooter than McDaniels was. And probably the best of all these sort of like two-way wings that were like defensive-leaning wings that we're going to talk about here. So I got Dort. I love him.
I do too. I'm going to take
Also
Jaden
took
next.
Brandon Ingram out of the first-round series completely. Should be mentioned.
Yeah,
I just wanted to get...
Yeah,
got Ingram traded.
Incredible. Yeah. If you put the nail in that coffin, I think for sure. I'm just gonna take Jay McDaniels next. I want a little more time, frankly, to think about how I want to do the star thing because I think there's a couple different. I'm like really processing. Like I'm trying to between one guy in particular, and maybe you'll decide for me, and then I don't have to like make this decision. There's one guy that I'm really kind of torn between, like some things with him about the playoffs versus not playoffs, and I'll leave it at that. But Jaden McDaniels, I want that forward on my team. I can play him in lots of different lineups. I also just love this Wolves team. I kind of want my team to represent teams that I loved this year and in these playoffs to some degree. And I just have loved everything about this Wolves run. So give me Jaden.
I love it. All right. I need to look up something really quick, which is what I'm going to do. But I feel really good about my next two picks.
Okay.
I'm going to go my next pick. Let's see here. Give me Miles Turner.
Okay.
I'm going Miles Turner.
A little high. I think considering I took two centers, you probably could have waited on this. Would be my counterpoint.
Yep, that's okay. I'm taking Miles Turner. Shooting plus 40% from 3-point range. Been awesome defensively. I love everything. I love the size that he brings. I think he's really found something and unlocked something as a rim roller. I trust Anthony Edwards and the Miles Turner pick and roll to really work. And I like his ability to space the floor, which is really important with the lineup that I have. Everything that you've gotten from Naz Reid, I feel like Miles Turner is just that on steroids. So I'm taking Turner. I feel good about it. You're up.
No tattoos though. I'm gonna go to another team. I'm gonna flip to the East Coast of a team that I really loved, and I'm gonna get another role guy at guard. Give me Dante DiVincenzo
Great
at
pick.
guard.
Great pick.
46. Not a reason they lost against the Pacers. That guy gave absolutely everything. 46% from three in that series. 35% in that first round. Was mixing it up. Was tough. Was physical. That guy is everywhere. That guy is awesome. That guy is a two-way legit playoff guy. I think someone, frankly, went overlooked in this league for a long time for reasons that I understand injuries were a part of it, but a really, really good deep playoff role guy that's going to be like is just one of the best contracts and one of the best playoff like role guys in the league that I think we have right now. I love him, and I'm very thrilled to get him at this point in the draft.
I'm taking Anthony Davis as my next and final star.
Okay, so he was not. He was not on the guys I was referencing. He was not on my list, and he probably should have been. And I want to mea culpa that. Which so I think that's fair.
Absolute banger of a first round, 5 games.
Yeah,
that was it. But dude scored 28 points per game on 63% shooting, 15.5 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.6 blocks. The guy was phenomenal and bringing all that defensive stuff. I mean, he was a defensive player, or he wasn't a defensive player either, finalist, but he should have been. There was a clear top 4, and unfortunately, it's only limited to 3 players when we do these finalists. But he unlocks everything for me. I can play him at center with Miles Turner at power forward. I could play him at forward with Miles Turner at center, depending on the matchups. And against your team, I'd probably have Turner guard Jokic and then Anthony Davis be the rover. I kind of like that as the format. He's maybe the best in the league at that rover defensive role. And between Derek White, Anthony Edwards, Lou Dort, Anthony Davis, and Miles Turner, you don't have a spot that you can attack in that defense. Offensively, there's enough floor spacing. That's my top 5. And I think with this front line, it's a little supersized, but I think I needed a little bit more size considering that the perimeter positions are a little bit smaller.
I think also, Wes, like big picture in these playoffs, we have seen a certain kind of role players succeed. Like when I was looking at just like PR of a certain number of guys who did certain things, and like say we want to by PR as like an advanced step, but like they all kind of fit certain categories. Like they all kind of fit certain things. Like the guys that are smaller, it was like Mike Conley was really like the one guy that kind of popped through as like among the role guys, so to speak. That weren't these like positionally defensively flexible guys, and I think that is telling about where the league is at to some degree. Okay, so it's my pick. So let's recap rosters for a second. I just need a second to think. So I have Jokic.
Right in front of me.
Yeah. All right. So
you
if you want to run through, read them back.
I'll go with yours first. You have Jokic, Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, and Dante DiVincenzo. So you're probably looking at another guard at this point. I've got Derek White, Anthony Edwards, Lou Dort, Anthony Davis, and Miles Turner as my starting 5.
Yeah, here is my challenge, I would say. I don't need to draft my other star right now. But I also like kind of need my roster needs like another forward is what I would say. Like I probably need another forward. And the role forwards, you're kind of like picking certain things. I'm going to do something weird just for the sake of the content, Wes. Okay?
All right.
In star, I'm going to take Let me check one thing here. Let me double check one. Let me just check some numbers for 1 second.
Do your thing. You're taking a long time. You're waiting to your other star. I like the move of waiting for your star until the very end, kind of letting me set the table there. That was sort of my goal in going role players with my first. Well, I went with the first pick. I went to role player. So we were kind of thinking the same thing. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think we both tried to outsmart each other, and it's like okay, but then we just kind of.
No, I think it worked. No, I think this was the right call. This is the right way to do it because I think the role play there's a finite pool, and this is what I was starting to say before, and I didn't want to give away my strategy, but evidently you were thinking the same thing, where the pool of valuable role players is much smaller than the pool of valuable stars, and the stars are stars because they're so good, but I also trust that they could kind of fit in with whatever kind of role player roster that you put together. You could just sort of plug in these stars. I do think that there's a star that you should take. And it's pretty obvious that would fit the best with your roster. But if you want to go role player next, I guess would be your either forward or your sixth man. You can move
Yeah, Nas I think is going to be my sixth man. Is I think my plan as of right now, and I'm going to go star. And I mean, you can tell me this is who you would have taken. I think he's going to go down as kind of having like a postseason that his teams they didn't go as far as I think as good as he was. He also just a little bit healthier and I think a little bit better defensively than the other guy I would have considered. I'm going to take Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yep, that's the right pick. Totally the right pick.
Okay,
Yep.
I think two-way, I think the way he delivered, I think particularly in the second round, I mean 55% from three in the Dallas series is just like red hot. Certainly I think, that late foul was really, really tough. But that guy is a playoff scorer. That guy is a playoff comfort guy. That guy is going to be fine. Whenever the Thunder now, it's about catching up to him. It is not about is he good enough. It is about can Chet, can Dort, can J-Dub, can whatever they trade Gideon their picks for, like whatever else they do, can they catch up to Shai because he's good enough to carry them really, really far on a playoff run. So I'm taking Shai as my other star. Jaylen Brown, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Luka Doncic, the other guys on my list, all for various reasons, not taking her. Partially didn't take Jaylen Brown, in part because we're going to talk about him later, and I didn't want to ruin the other part of the conversation we have to do in this show.
Yep, little surprised that Luka and Jalen Brunson didn't get taken, but that's the whole idea of this draft is we're only allowed to have two stars, so somebody was going to be left out.
Well, look at Brunson, one of the players of the season. And Brunson is one of the guys that I was like, okay, he's probably going to go. You think about guys who define this.
If I were you, it was going to be for me. It would have been between Brunson and SGA based on the roster that you have. It would have been either Brunson or SGA, even over Luka at this point. Again, this could be different a week from now if Luka just turns into Luka again in these conference finals.
And I know Brunson was battling injuries. The Knicks team as a whole was just an attrition based thing to some degree. But his postseason stats, his shooting numbers, second round, 46% from the field, 31.6% from three, 77% from the line. Round one, 42% from the field, 30% from three, and 77% from the line. I know there's some big games in there that mask and that kind of masks some off nights. SGA was just qualitatively, statistically better than Brunson and less hurt. Luka hurt. I'm going to take the healthier guy who's just a little better. But then Luka can make us look like a dumbass in a week, Wes, both of us, because he could be in the NBA Finals, and none of the guys we picked will be in the NBA Finals.
Exactly. All right, so I'm up.
Yeah. Your last pick.
All right, I'm going Aaron Gordon.
Okay. Did you like how he played? I'm asking
the last couple of games of that series would put a bad taste in your mouth, but his playoffs overall were awesome. He shot 40% from deep. Big game after big game, big play after big play. He shot almost 60% overall, more than 4.5 assists per game. The rebounding is always there, and the defense is always phenomenal too. And I was between a few different players here, but I like my general theme is I'm going in on just strong players. Every player I have right now is strong for his position. Derek White, strong for his position. Ant, super strong for his position. Dort, obviously strong for his position. Anthony Edwards, Miles Turner. I'm getting size. I'm getting strength there. And then Aaron Gordon is my sixth man. I could bring him in. I trust him to make open jumpers. I can bring him in for Turner and move Davis to center. I can move him in for Davis and give Davis a breather and not really drop off that much defensively with Gordon in there for Anthony Davis. Everybody else stays put where they are. And what I like too here, and why I ultimately went with Aaron Gordon over some other options that I was thinking of, more defensive leaning options, is that he provides a little bit more playmaking than some of the other guys left on the board here, where in in a roster that doesn't have like that primo like SGA level kind of one man show playmaker. I think having playmaking at every position is also really important. And Aaron Gordon coming off the bench where you can kind of get into those small ball units. And he can even initiate some offense for me and take something off of Derek White's plate, take something off of Anthony Edwards' plate for a little while. I really like his fit here. So I go Aaron Gordon as my sixth man.
Yeah, I think that is reasonable. I'm gonna go with PJ Washington as
Yep, that was the other
my
guy I was
last
thinking
pick.
of. Yeah, it's a good pick.
I think I wanted to go him or Derek Jones Jr. to give some Dallas Mavericks like role guy who ran a little hot representation in this draft. I think both guys worthy, but Washington a little more versatile, a little better of a shooter. I think a little bit better of a defender, a little more positionally versatile there. So let's do roster recap and then we'll do coaches. So I have at center Nikola Jokic. I have at forwards Jaden McDaniels and PJ Washington. And I guards, I have SGA and Dante DiVincenzo. And my sixth man is Naz Reid.
I've got, as my starting backcourt, I've got Derek White and Anthony Edwards at guard. I've got Lou Dort and Anthony Davis at forward. I've got Miles Turner at center. My sixth man is Aaron Gordon.
All right, coach. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna try to cheat here. If I take Chris Finch because he's technically on the back end.
Second row Finch, you're allowed to have him. I had him on my list.
No, but do I also get Mike Nori?
Yeah,
do I get both?
You get both of them.
Okay, then I'm taking Chris Finch and Mike Nori.
Good for you.
Thank you.
What do we think about Eric Spoelstra? His team is technically in the playoffs.
Okay, Wes, hold on. I gotta tell you, I'm gonna pull up the receipts right the fuck now because this is awesome. This is awesome. I love this.
I did forget that the Heat were in the playoffs this year. For the record.
So no that and like, but does the play in? I mean, the first were they really though? Like the first round, like
with a fake roster, with a skeleton roster, but they did take a game off of Boston.
So did the Cavs with JB Bickerstaff, who got canned.
But you had Donovan, you had Donovan Mitchell, you had like real players out there. They did this with Haywood Highsmith. Okay, like they. Do I get Eric Spoelstra did a great? He outcoached Joe Mazzulla in that first round, which seems impossible.
If you want to do it, you can do it. I
gotta give Spo his credit. If I'm not allowed Spo, and you can totally take him off the table.
No, if you want, he was in the playoffs. Technically, he's in the playoffs. He was a playoff coach.
He's the best coach in the league. I think he would get the most out of this roster. He loves Anthony Edwards. Compared him to Dwayne Wade, even though he doesn't like doing that. But I will say that Jason Kidd has been a tremendous coach in these playoffs and probably has been, for my money, of the coaches that made it out of the first round, the best coach in these playoffs. So if I'm not allowed to go with Spo, then I'll take Jason Kidd and I'll feel really good about it. But if I'm allowed Spo, give me the guy. Give me Eric Spoelstra.
My argument is that I think for the sake of these playoffs and us memorializing these playoffs, you should take Jason Kidd.
All right, fair enough. Taking Jason Kidd. Done.
He's really, I think differently of him as a coach because of these playoffs. I think he's legitimately one of the best, he's an upper echelon coach now, I think, based on these playoffs.
He figured it out. I think I would go even before the playoffs, after the trade deadline, took a couple of weeks, but getting the Mavericks to buy in defensively, because even Derek Jones Jr., who now has a reputation of being like a defensive stopper, hasn't really been that for his career. He's sort of theoretically been that. Like, he could be a defensive stopper. Now he very much is that kind of in the Jaden McDaniels mold of these guys. He's also doing all the things offensively, the high flying, the cutting, all these things. But he's got Kid does. Luka bought in. Kyrie is bought in defensively. That goes a long way. He had a vision for this team. He was in step with the front office in terms of the acquisitions that they made. All going back to Derek Lively on draft night, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington. They were all in lockstep here. And they are now executing the vision from Nico Harrison, from Jason Kidd, from Luka Doncic, everybody on down. That's what makes a good organization. Super impressed with the Dallas Mavericks. That's why I picked them to beat the Timberwolves in 7 games and go to the NBA Finals. So, yeah, those are it. Good stuff, man.
This is good. Can I give you a couple guys that were also on my role player long list that we didn't get to? I just want to shout them out. Josh Hart.
Yep.
Derek Lively.
Yep, mine too.
Mike Conley.
Mine too.
Evan Mobley just for Game 5.
Fair enough.
Drew Holiday.
I didn't have him on my list. He has had a terrible playoffs. He had
He's
one
had
good
some.
game one good game all
Yeah, that's true.
postseason.
I just trust Drew. That's just like I love that guy, and I want to torture Brendan, I guess. And Derek Jones Jr. and Carl. Shout out
Uh,
Carl. Carl
I
Anthony Towns.
had Towns is a star because he's getting
Yeah,
paid
that's
like
true.
one.
That's true.
I almost went Chet Holmgren over Miles Turner.
He was just.
He got pushed around a little bit too much for me. But
and
defensively,
the 3-point shooting percentage is tough.
it went down to 29% in the or 26% or something. It was sub 30% in the playoffs, and that's ultimately it was that and the fact that he didn't kind of buy into my team ethos of just being strong. That went in, but he also has a case to be the best defensive player in these playoffs. I mean, he was tremendous outside of the rebounding stuff. He was absolutely disruptive defensively. So that he was on my list of role players, but I think Chet Holmgren's a better player than Miles Turner. Miles Turner has had a better playoffs, and that's why I went with him.
He is absolutely a reason teams should just like throw their guys to.
Also,
into stuff.
almost went with Herb Jones, despite the fact that the Pelicans got outed and in the first round, and that his shooting percentages were a little bit down. But he was still an awesome defender. And if for whatever reason PJ Washington and Aaron Gordon were not available because you picked both of them, Herb Jones was like next on my list to kind of fill in that versatile defensive role that I needed.
If I think more people remember the Heat were in the playoffs than the Pelicans at this point, so I think Spo would have been more defensible than New Orleans.
Fair enough.
I would have. One of us should have, as a bit, tried to pick like playing game Zion.
The play-in doesn't count.
Yeah, it's true. Shut up. All right, let's go to the Eastern Conference Finals. Which, Wes, I gotta tell you, they feel over to you.
Yes. Especially, and at the time of us recording this, we don't have any clarity on Tyrese Halliburton. But if this is, even if he's not sidelined, but if this is an injury that makes him look like he looked when he was injured during the regular season, then the series is most certainly over. I think the Pacers could still make it competitive if this is just like if that was just like a 1-game thing, and he can get back to what he was at the tail end of that Knicks series and what he was in Game 1. But he didn't look right in Game 2. He was struggling even before the injury, just 10 points, not great shooting, wasn't involved as a playmaker, had a hard time getting into the teeth of Boston's defense and spraying out and doing all those things that you want him to do. So if Halliburton is in any way limited, then yes, the series is over. I still feel really good about the Celtics. I don't think anybody's really, for real, picking the Pacers at this stage. I just think that the Celtics are too good. They're getting whatever they want offensively. It's just good possession after good possession after good possession. And defensively, they go on these 4 to 5 minute stretches that basically have decided both of these games. And that's the formula. And frankly, that's all they need. They're not going to need any huge performances. They got the miracle shot from Jaylen Brown at the end of Game 1. I think they figured out what they needed to do in Game 2. They did it, and I think they're going to roll on to the finals.
Jason Tatum is shooting 27% from 3 in these playoffs, and it hasn't meant a damn thing.
Yep. That's why Derek White was the number 1 pick.
Shut up. Derek White, 20 plus 2,200 at BetMGM to win Finals MVP is just like staring me in the face as like Andre Iguodala wins Finals MVP stuff.
That's a great value. Put $10 on it.
Yeah, get your money back. That or Jaylen Brown at plus 475. Just like if Boston's going to win it, I don't think Jason Tatum is like going to win Finals MVP. Just feels like everything that has happened in these playoffs is telling me that like that's not how this is going to go. There's no indicators that like Tatum is going to like have that kind of like coronation as like he led them there. It's going to be like the Celtics process and organization like gets them over the hump more than like he got them there is kind of like what I'm taking from this more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. I think that. Look, my biggest concern with the Celtics is that the conversation around Boston has been so convoluted in that, okay, their playoff run has been easy, and is that fair? And where does it rank among the easiest playoff teams ever? And whatever. Like, to me, that's not really the point, right? Like, if you want to just sort of hate on the Celtics, go ahead. Like, be my guest. Like, I'm here with that. Like, that's fine. But if you want to just knock their fans and be like, whatever.
I mean, I am curious to see how the fan base like reacts to like the first game when it's Luka and one of them drops 40 in the finals.
Oh, we see.
Like,
it.
I am curious.
In Boston. No, I mean the fans in Boston are so nervous about this team that every time the opponent scores on 2 straight possessions, they go silent. And you never hear that from a Boston crowd at TD Garden. You never hear that. It's been the weirdest, most roller coaster ride crowd. And I get it. I understand why they're nervous. And any Celtics fans that says, this year it's different, we're different this time, we're going to get over the hump, we're the best team, plus 17 net rating in the regular season, Jordan and Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Warriors, like, okay, you could say that out loud, but what your fans are saying when they go quiet after the other team goes on a little mini run is that they are still worried about the inner fabric of this team. And I don't think that fabric has been tested in these playoffs. And that's not to knock the playoff run. That is to make a point that I don't think that the Celtics now are better than they were at the end of the regular season. And I think that the Timberwolves have gotten better since the end of the regular season. The Mavericks have gotten better since the end of the regular season. And so you can take all of your net ratings, throw that in the garbage. It don't matter. It doesn't matter. The teams in the West have gotten better. They have been stress tested, and they've come through the other side better for it in a way that the Celtics haven't. And that, if I'm the Celtics, is a thing that worries me if and when I eventually make it to the finals and I have to play one of these two teams.
Yeah, I am genuinely curious to see like how a team that has not really had adversity that isn't of their own creation deals with actual adversity. Like Brendan has been like kind of teasing me about like me like bringing this up like over text and when we've talked about it on the show as like, are you really like you bring this up a lot? It's like, yeah, because I want to see it. Like NBA champions are, I think, like you go through stuff. Teams talk about this. The Heat, I talked about this a lot during their improbable run of the finals. The Cavs during their 3-1 comeback talked about everything they went through that made that possible. Like you don't get there in a vacuum. And it's also like it's like counterbalanced by the fact by two things. Number one, they're gonna be fresher. Like the West is an absolute slugfest of a boxing match of who's gonna make it out. Boston's gonna show up just like no cuts, like Porzingis like aside, and I think they will need him to win the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're gonna be in as good a shape as you possibly can be. Knock on wood,
probably
injuries now and then, right? They're in great shape in that sense. Number two, I think Jaylen Brown is playing the best basketball I've ever seen him play. It is confidence we've ever seen him play. And if he plays like this going into the finals and Tatum is like 5% better, that duo, like that might just be like enough paired with Derek White. Like it might. Like it's not a guarantee. But if you look at like what, like let's say the Wolves do figure this out in advance, let's say. The Wolves are struggling with one big wing right now in Luka, and we'll get to that. Do they have the stopping two, even with their bigs? Is that something they're structurally ready to do? Are we sure Derek White and PJ Washington and Dante Exum and Luka, like who's a little beat up, are up like that? Like there are questions that Boston has, I think, answers to, but these things feel at odds to each other to me. With them is the biggest thing. They just all of the stuff with them feels at odds, butting up against each other. With I want to see teams go through it and process stuff and grow from the playoffs. But it's not their fault they haven't had to, and like they should be like they're clearly very good at the same time.
So you're putting on Jaylen Brown. I do think you're onto something there. He to me was always the guy that felt so much in this season. Now that they went Joe Mazzulla, Masball, 5 out, all this stuff, he was always sort of the one who doesn't belong, the odd man out a little bit. He just seemed a little bit different than the others, and I think that was seen as a bug for a long time. I think it's a feature. And yeah, they're going to need that. They're going to need that guy who's like, screw your 5-out offense, screw all the pretty screening for each other, BS. We get it that Jason Tatum is a really great screener now, and every Boston fan will tell you that. Like, he doesn't need to score because he screens now. And it's like, all right, cool, dude. Like, whatever. Like
you don't make as much money as he does and are as talented as him to screen. You know?
And like, it's not even just Celtics fans. Like the Celtics themselves, like we don't care that he's shooting 30% overall. Like the guy sets good screens and he's a good playmaker and he's unselfish. It's like, okay, well sometimes you just need your better player to be selfish and do something. And Jaylen Brown has been doing that for them. That's kind of been Jaylen Brown's role. Like if the whole Celtics thing is sort of this Swiss movement watch that just moves pretty and smoothly, like Jaylen Brown is just like the hammer that smashes the watch, and he's like, screw your stupid watch. I'm going at the basket. And they need that. They need that element in the offense. And I think that he there's been so much conversation around like who's the most important Celtic, right? And some people will say it's Derek White. Some galaxy brain people will say it's Kristaps Porzingis. Some people will just go with the best player, and that's Jason Tatum. It might end up being Jaylen Brown because I think everybody else sets the highest floor in the playoffs. The Celtics have the highest floor of any team in the playoffs. Every possession is a good possession. They get a good shot on nearly every possession, and their defense is at such a level that they have the highest floor. Jaylen Brown might be the ceiling raiser to me. And I think a lot of Celtics fans want that to be Jason Tatum. And I don't know that Tatum has that in him. Maybe he does. He definitely could. We'll see. But it has not been the case in these playoffs. More often than not, it's been Jaylen Brown. When he has a great game, like he did in Game 2, that Celtics team looks unstoppable. So there's all that. I just wonder, again, the stress of like the part of the adversity that you're talking about going through the playoffs is that it forces you to solve puzzles. And the playoffs, just as much as talent, it's about problem solving. It's about solving those puzzles. The Celtics, this is why I said I don't think they're better than they were at the end of the regular season, is because they haven't figured out counters to anything. They haven't gotten pushed into a corner and figured out a way to get them to punch themselves out of it. Figured out new ways to play, new schemes. And maybe ultimately they're so good that the scheme that they had in Game 1 is just as good as the scheme they'll have in the NBA Finals, and that's all they're going to need. Perhaps that's the case. I just have a hard time seeing that because I've never seen a team win a championship that way. And I think what Minnesota and Dallas have learned about themselves is that they have those counters and they have the fortitude and they have that ability to just sort of change on the fly. We've seen it not just from game to game, but quarter to quarter, possession to possession, in a way that I just haven't really seen it from the Celtics. And it's not to say that they can't do it, but I know for a fact that the Timberwolves and Mavericks can, and they're practiced at it. And that might just be the thing that takes the Celtics for a loop. That could be an adjustment for a game or two for them is, oh my gosh, this is just a higher level of play than we've been accustomed to.
The Celtics, by design, almost try to solve puzzles before they get out of the box. Like, as maybe the way I would describe it. It's like they're like
in the regular season. They experiment.
Yeah, but no, I mean even now it's like what my point is, Wes. It's like they have the way they play. And, like, what is in front of them doesn't really matter, almost. It doesn't feel like. Jaylen Brown's the only one who is almost like, yeah, I'm going to, like, drive right now because I have a small TJ McConnell or, like, Aaron Nesmith can't guard me. You know what I mean? It's like everyone else is like, well, we kind of do this thing. Like, we don't really have to solve the puzzle. Like, we kind of know how this works. We just kind of hit the buttons and it works. Like, that's kind of what they are. I will say if there's one thing I did like for them tactically the rest of the series, I did feel like it opened things up for them after a tight first quarter. Maybe because Cornette got hurt, they did this, but O'Shea Brissett is like more switchable for them. I think that's a good addition, but I think they won a game 2 for the first time in the playoffs, so they did improve. I guess
I guess congrats to them for that. Never mind. Everything I said, strike it.
Yeah, they won a game 2. Congratulations. All right, Western Conference. Game 1, look back real quickly here because Game 2 is going to happen a couple hours after you listen to this, after you watch this. Wes, I'll ask you this: overreaction, yes or no? Based just on Game 1, thinking about the series big picture. The Wolves, we know their defense is great. We know that they have the best defense, I think, in the league this year, and just clamp down is strong, but beat Nikola Jokic, beat the defending champs on the back of their defense in a lot of ways. Do they have a size problem on the wing defending Luka as good as their defense is? 15 in the fourth, I believe, for Luka in Game 1. Felt like the deciding factor. And Jaden McDaniels, as great as he is, as much as I love him, I drafted him for our teams earlier, as good as he is, he felt too small. And like Kyle Anderson is not an answer. So, overreaction, yes or no? Is this a problem?
It's not a problem, but it is a mismatch. And I can explain that. Like Jaden McDaniels, yes, is too small to guard Luka one-on-one. He's not going to stop Luka. Very few players do stop Luka, for the record. I don't know who's really doing it. Lou Dort is why I drafted him, is because he's got the strength to do it. But the point being is that like this isn't new. The Minnesota Timberwolves knew this. Like in their matchups before, Luka is so strong that he just pushes Jaden McDaniels out of the way, and we saw that in Game 1. We saw that in the regular season. We've seen that in seasons prior. It's not a problem because the Timberwolves are built for it. They have size in the front court. They have Rudy Gobert by the basket. They've got Karl-Anthony Towns as a help side defender. Like they have the size to bother Luka Doncic, and Luka didn't have to post up very much in Game 1. there was a couple times where he got switched onto a mismatch, and Minnesota was willingly bringing those doubles, and I thought that was a good thing to see from them because if you double with size, that just makes it harder for Luka to get the pass over the top that he likes to make. But I wouldn't overreact too much to game one. I thought their drop coverage actually, despite what Stan Van Gundy was saying on the broadcast, was exactly what they had to do. Luka and Kyrie made so many tough shots in game one that it would be easy to overreact to that, but they took away everything at the rim, Minnesota did. And it was Luka and Kyrie making those short mid-range shots in the paint from like that foul line area over and over and over again that basically doomed Minnesota and was what was eventually a 3-point game. It was decided by 3 points. Kyrie and Luka together shot 50% on those short mid-range shots. That would be by far, with a bullet, the number one short mid-range shot percentage in the league in the regular season. Dallas was 9th in the regular season. That, even for good shot makers, tough shot makers like Luka and Kyrie, even that was a little bit of an out-of-body experience for them, is my point. Can they do that in the Western Conference Finals and win this thing? Absolutely. I trust them with no question to make tough shots. But you'd rather give them the tough shots than to give them the ones at the rim, which is if you bring Rudy Gobert up to the level of the screen, or if you switch up these matchups a little bit and you dramatically overreact to game one and change up your defensive scheme, you're going to give them shots at the rim. Gobert can't get up to the level of the screen. I don't think that you want to put somebody other than Jaden McDaniels on these guys because he at least does flatten things out a little bit to the point where it's just not going to be a straight line attack for Luka. You can experiment. You could put McDaniels on Kyrie, see if you could just try to take one of them out of the game and kind of let Luka do his thing. Like, sure, I expect Finch and Norrie to experiment, but I wouldn't overreact dramatically. I think that overall Minnesota kind of forced Dallas into the shots that they want to force them into, and I think what you need to figure out is offensively how you could score more points if you're the Timberwolves to get back into the series.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like I thought by comparison, just with Derrick Jones Jr., with Washington, I thought even Luka at times, Dallas had a lot of size to throw at Ant and make him pause even just a little bit and muck things up against an offense that we already know struggles to process at times, right? It wasn't as aggressive as what we saw Denver do in Game 7, and thus not as not requiring as much energy, not burning as much energy to rip through. And what I think really did cost Denver in that Game 7. I don't think that kind of aggressive defense would be sustainable, but like they did a version of it that I think they can sustain and can give some fits and starts against the Wolves and kind of get them kind of coming and going a little bit depending on what personnel they have on the floor. I think even it's particularly if Jason Kidd, as good as he's been, maybe figures out some of the lineups. Like he played Hardy and Green together in this game. That's some of the points where the Wolves got going a little bit. I think if he kind of X-nays that, stays a little bit bigger, maybe one of those guys, if he's gonna play those guys, just one of them at a time. I think like you can kind of play this way, and how the Wolves, to the point about finding counters, solving puzzles, figuring out what you can do. If they can figure that out, then we have a series. But I think to your point, like if you're the Wolves, make those tough shots again. Luka's a little banged up. Is he going to do that over 7 games? You probably take that bet and ride that out. I think the Wolves,
you don't have a choice.
Probably have a little. You don't have a choice. Like, what are you supposed to do? And
right, you don't want to give them You don't want to give up open threes. You want to chase them off the line. That's how your defense is built. You don't want them to shoot at the rim because Luka and Kyrie are the best at the league, some of the best in the league at finishing at the basket. You don't have a choice. You got to force them to take tough shots. And by the way, if they make 50% of their tough shots over the course of the series and they win, tip of the cap, man. That's just tough shot making. That's what the playoffs come down to sometimes.
The history of NBA analysis is also people like you and I, Wes, talking about how like teams need to get a stopper for LeBron, for Dwayne Wade, for Kobe, Luka, Durant, and being like, yeah, but he averaged like 35 over the course of a series. Right. Like it just doesn't, like those stoppers, to your point earlier, don't exist.
Well, and the other thing too is you can't just look at it as, do I have a defender for this offensive player? It's a whole scheme thing. Defense is a team concept. Offense is more of a one-on-one thing. And, for the thing that Minnesota has to figure out is Dallas didn't have a real rim protection presence. They kind of do. They fend off their rim protection, right? They do rim protection before they have to do rim protection. They have Jokic come up to the level of the screen. They've got Aaron Gordon as showing on the backside, all these things, whatever it is. They try to prevent you from getting even close to the rim before they have to defend the rim. Dallas is a little bit different. They have real traditional rim protectors in Gafford and Lively. And I think that threw Anthony Edwards for a loop a little bit because against Denver, because he's got that fast, quick that quick first step, he was able to turn that corner before that second defender was able to show on that screen and just burn through him. And but if you get past Jokic, for instance, or whoever it is that's at that level of the screen, then you got basically a runway to the basket. And Anthony Edwards torched him time and time again. He doesn't have that against the Mavs, right? Like they're gonna play it. They're gonna play it straight up on the perimeter. And if you get past your guy, we've got Gafford and we've got Lively hanging back waiting for you. And so when Edwards turns that corner, he doesn't see a wide runway. He sees a 7-footer standing in front of him now. And I think that threw him for a loop a little bit in game one. He's going to have to figure out how to adjust to it.
Do you feel more confident, Wes, just before we can check on this next week when you and I talk? Do you feel more confident based on this series for the rest of the way based on what you saw in game one?
In my pick for Dallas? Is that what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think that the Mavericks defensively are just better suited to guard the Timberwolves. And I think that the Timberwolves they need to figure out. I think they could figure it out. I still have no idea who's going to win the series. I think it goes 7. I think it's going to be really close. I think the Timberwolves are going to look a lot different than they did in game one. I just think they needed a game to kind of get their bearings and figure out, the whole styles make fights thing. Like, oh, this is just a different. Like we were doing a boxing match before, and now it's kickboxing, and so we just gotta act a little different now. And I think that's what they got to do.
Yeah, I seem to favor Dallas now as well. I think, but stick with your picks. So I'm still thinking the Wolves, but we will in fact see Dallas now a slight favorite at BetMGM for what that is worth. But that's going to do it for the Just Basketball Show for Friday, May 24th. I'm Chris Manning. That is Wes Goldberg. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcast platform of choice. Subscribe on YouTube. Find us on Instagram, TikTok, and X. You can use our promo code JustBasketball at BetMGM and deposit at least $10. Place your first wager in any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if that first bet loses. Check out our link below from Homage as well and support the Just Basketball Show. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy the hoops.